Columnist Bob Robb, I'm Richard Rellis here in the Arizona Republican AZ Central newsroom. Police Chief Jerry Williams had some firings of officers. There's been some discussion from Sal DiCiccio, a councilman, and some others about whether her leadership constitutes some sort of war on police. Your thoughts on this?
I don't think that there's a war on police, but I do think that there's a disturbing political movement that is disproportionately influencing events. And while I don't want to comment on either of the two particular disciplinary hearings, I do think it has affected the way the police chief is conducting her office. I'm not one who's a reflexive defender of the police. I believe that if you give people enormous power, there'll be a tendency to abuse it, and we need to have disciplinary processes in place to protect against that with respect to the police. But it should be fact-driven and not driven by politics. And particularly with this narrative of tricky, trigger-happy Phoenix policemen, I think it's being driven by politics rather than facts, because I believe the facts suggest that the Phoenix police aren't trigger-happy.
Right, that it sounds like from your analysis and looking at reports you've seen, the police pull the trigger at a certain situation. There just seems to be more of those situations.
There's two levels of context that are important. The first is that suppose that the spike in police shootings, going from 15 or 20 a year to 44, did occur. But in the context of over 50,000 arrests a year and multiple times that in terms of interactions with the public, it's just not a variation that's particularly meaningful. And the second level of context, which was provided by a report the city commissioned, was the circumstances in which these shootings took place. Over 90% of them involved responding to an aggravated assault or homicide case, and over 75% of them involved someone with a gun. It also occurred in the context of a similar spike in assaults on police officers with guns. So the Phoenix police were walking into dangerous situations more frequently with more people who were armed and more people who were assaulting them. It's hardly a surprise that there would be a spike, and a spike that's not statistically meaningful in the context of overall police activity. But that's the narrative that's driving a lot of what is occurring with respect to looking at the police department and arguing for additional accountability. And I think to too large of an extent, City Hall and the police chief are responding to that false narrative and the political momentum behind it, rather than setting the story straight. The public needs to learn the two contexts within which this spike has occurred, rather than reaching false conclusions and coming up with remedies that don't match the actual circumstances.
Right, just based on the number of shootings. Do you think that an officer's social media habits provide a window into how they might act on the street?
Yes, I don't have a problem with holding the police officers who said highly inflammatory and derogatory things on social media accountable. Whether it justifies firing as opposed to severe discipline and remedial training, I'm not sure. Again, I don't want to get into the particular cases. I just haven't jumped into them deeply enough to do that. And it's less what Williams did with respect to those two cases than the fact that she has backtracked from defending the overall activity of the police department with respect to the spike in shootings. She initially did cite the increase in assaults. She got blowback from political groups that are agitating for greater control of the police, and she stepped back from that. And so I fear that she is responding too much to the political wins and not enough to ensuring that the public understands the full context of what's occurring. So again, I don't question her judgment in these two particular cases, but I fear that overall she's backtracking from sharing with the public the straight story on the overall performance of the police department.